A team of researchers descends to the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, where the Titanic sank over 80 years ago, claiming the lives of 2,000 people. However, the human tragedy barely registers with the treasure hunter team, led by Brock Lovett. Their focus is deploying an underwater drone inside the sunken liner to locate the lost treasures of the drowned passengers. In a first-class cabin, the team discovers a safe. Lovett believes it may contain a pendant with a blue diamond, once owned by Nathan Hockley, known as the Pittsburgh Rothschild. The researchers bring the safe to the surface, anticipating their find. However, they're disappointed to find only wet paper sheets inside. Cleaning them carefully, they uncover a remarkably well-preserved portrait of a naked woman wearing the pendant known as the Heart of the Ocean. The drawing, signed with the initials J.D., and dated April 14, 1912, captures the fateful day of the Titanic's collision with an iceberg. Upon seeing a news report about the expedition, an elderly woman named Rose is struck with silent amazement at the sight of the drawing. She contacts Lovett, claiming to be the girl in the portrait. Despite the team's concerns about her credibility, Lovett decides to hear her out. Rose arrives at the research vessel by helicopter, accompanied by her granddaughter Lizzie and her dog, along with several suitcases of personal belongings, which further raises doubts about her sanity. Rose asks to see the portrait and reminisces briefly about her past. Lovett decides to verify her claims and asks about the owner of the Heart of the Ocean, as this information was confidential. Rose calmly reveals that the precious stone belonged to Nathan Hockley, who acquired it for his son, Cal. She recounts being the last person to see the diamond on the night of the tragedy, as Cal had given it to her as a wedding gift. Lovett urges Rose to recount the events of the past once more to aid his team in finding the lost treasure. A member of the expedition presents a detailed computer reconstruction of the Titanic's sinking, describing the process with enthusiasm akin to discussing an exciting computer game. Tears fill Rose's eyes as she relives the harrowing night, where for her and the other passengers, the Titanic transformed into sheer hell. The elderly woman's memories transport her back to April 10, 1912. 17-year-old Rose, accompanied by her mother Ruth and fiancé Cal, boards the first-class deck of the Titanic cruise liner. Hundreds of people, captivated by the ship's scale and grandeur, gather to witness its departure. The voyage from England to America marks the onset of a new era in maritime history. Despite the luxury surrounding her, young Rose remains untouched by the liner's opulence, apprehensive about her impending marriage to the aristocratic yet haughty Cal. She fears being confined to a gilded cage after the wedding. Meanwhile, in a waterfront tavern, an American wanderer and artist named Jack Dawson enjoys his carefree existence. Winning third-class tickets to the Titanic in a poker game with his friend Fabrizio, they board the ship at the 11th hour, unaware of the adventures that await them. As passengers settle into their cabins, Cal disparages Rose's taste in art, deriding paintings by the relatively unknown Pablo Picasso. Among the passengers is Molly Brown, a flamboyant heiress who acquired her wealth through marriage to a successful gold miner. Ruth and other high society women express disdain for Molly, regarding her as an outsider in their social circle. Later, the elite convene for dinner with Thomas Andrews, the Titanic's chief engineer, who enthusiastically recounts details of the ship's construction, its innovative features, and unparalleled safety standards. However, Rose's interest wanes during discussions about the Titanic's immense size, prompting her to make sarcastic remarks at the table, much to the annoyance of her mother and fiancé. As the wealthy passengers admire the Titanic's grandeur through the lens of familiarity, third-class travelers sincerely marvel at its magnificence as the ship gracefully slices through the ocean expanses. On deck, Jack's attention is captivated by Rose, who seeks solace from her mundane surroundings to breathe in the fresh air. The sight of the enigmatic redhead beauty quickens Jack's heartbeat. His new friend Tommy skeptically remarks that an aristocrat like her would never pay attention to commoners like them. That evening, Rose realizes that her future is destined for an unbearable cycle of social obligations and shallow conversations with high society snobs. The free-spirited girl finds herself unable to accept such a life and, overwhelmed by despair, contemplates jumping into the ocean from the stern of the ship. Standing on the bow deck beneath the starry sky, Jack notices Rose and begins persuading her to abandon her perilous plan, warning her that he'll be compelled to jump after her. He confesses his dreadful fear of icy water and tries to divert her attention with stories of his childhood in frosty Wisconsin. Eventually, Jack succeeds in convincing Rose to return to the deck, but she inadvertently snags her dress and falls backward. Just in time, Jack grabs her hand and pulls her back on board. Upon hearing the girl's screams, Titanic crew members and Cal rush to the scene. Upon witnessing Jack and Rose in a compromising position, they conclude that the commoner assaulted the girl and apprehend him. Rose steps forward to defend Jack, explaining that she slipped accidentally and that Jack rescued her. She gives her rescuer a meaningful look, prompting him to corroborate her account. Once the situation is resolved, Cal orders Jack's release and, as a gesture of gratitude, invites him to dine in the first-class salon. Before retiring for the night, Cal visits Rose's cabin and presents her with the precious Heart of the Ocean pendant as a symbol of his deep affection. With warmth in his voice, he pledges to do anything for his beloved. However, for Rose, the ornament feels like a heavy shackle symbolizing her lack of freedom of choice. The girl finds herself drawn to the carefree artist Jack, with whom she quickly establishes a connection. She confides her doubts about her impending wedding to him. When Jack directly asks if she loves her fiancé, Rose is at a loss for words and begins to grow angry. In a surge of emotion, she snatches the album of drawings from his hands. However, upon seeing Jack's works, her anger instantly transforms into admiration. Feeling embarrassed by the portraits of nude French women, Rose is taken aback. Jack hastily explains that it's not the nudity that captivated him, but the unique aspects of their personalities. He recounts tales of a one-legged courtesan with elegant hands and an elderly lady from a French tavern. Despite her worn-out attire, she adorned herself with her finest jewelry every evening in anticipation of someone special. Jack aimed to immortalize their stories through his art, showcasing his talent to Rose. Meanwhile, Bruce Ismay, a key figure behind the Titanic's creation, engages in conversation with the ship's captain, Edward Smith. He persuades the captain to increase the ship's speed to reach America ahead of schedule and make a splash in the world media. Despite Smith's reservations about straining the Titanic's engines, he succumbs to Ismay's pressure. This decision will ultimately prove to be a fatal mistake, contributing to the future catastrophe. Jack and Rose spend the entire day engaged in heartfelt conversation, thoroughly enjoying each other's company. Rose confesses her desire to share Jack's adventurous life with him. Jack promises that upon reaching America, they will embark on adventures together. At her request, he teaches Rose to spit like a true man, but their fun is abruptly interrupted by Ruth's arrival accompanied by high-ranking ladies. An invitation to dinner resonates throughout the ship, prompting her mother to swiftly lead Rose away from the dubious youth. Molly warns Jack of the potential dangers lurking at the formal dinner, likening it to a snake pit. Eager to assist, she outfits him in an elegant suit from her son's wardrobe, ensuring he presents himself with dignity at the event. Stepping into the first-class salon for the first time, Jack is awestruck by the opulent surroundings. His gaze fixates on Rose as she gracefully descends in a stunning gown, unable to conceal his admiration. Meanwhile, Cal remains indifferent to his fiancée, engrossed in conversation with high society figures. Accompanying Rose and Molly to the table where the elite gathers, Jack faces nervousness and sharp remarks from Ruth and Cal. However, he swiftly assimilates into refined society, possessing a wealth that none present at the table can match: absolute freedom. Just days ago, he slept under a bridge. Now, he dines aboard the majestic ship amidst affluent company. Following dinner, the men adjourn to the smoking room, but Jack declines the invitation. Before departing, he discreetly slips a note into Rose's hand, proposing a rendezvous at the grand staircase clock. Embracing the call of adventure, Rose accepts, and together they venture to a party on the lower deck, where Irish melodies and carefree merriment abound. Rose loses herself in this new world, dancing until exhaustion sets in, relishing beer, and even partaking in friendly boxing matches with men. Enveloped in a sense of liberation, she remains oblivious to Mr. Lovejoy, Cal's devoted assistant, who surveys her and Jack closely. The following morning, Cal erupts into a scandal over Rose's perceived impropriety from the previous night. Ruth also expresses discontent, reminding her daughter of their dire financial straits following her father's passing, leaving them burdened with debts. Marriage to industrial magnate Cal represents their sole means of escaping poverty. Yielding to her mother's wishes, Rose acquiesces, while Cal instructs his security to keep Jack away from his fiancée. The assistants alert Captain Smith to the presence of drifting icebergs along the ship's course, yet he dismisses the warnings, opting to maintain maximum speed. Meanwhile, Andrews conducts a small tour of the ship for the passengers. During the tour, Rose observes that there are only enough lifeboats to accommodate half of the passengers. Andrews reassures her with a smirk, stating that there's no cause for concern. The Titanic is an unsinkable liner. Jack steals a coat and hat from a wealthy passenger and sneaks onto the upper deck. He covertly lures Rose into a secluded cabin to talk. Despite his disbelief, Rose uncertainly asserts her love for Cal and her intention to marry him. To Jack, Rose is an amazing and vibrant girl, and he fears that marriage to Cal will eventually extinguish the spark that attracted him to her so much.
It's not up to you to save me, Jack.
You're right. Only you can do that.
At dinner, Rose contemplates Jack's words as she observes a little girl whose mother has diligently taught her manners since early childhood. Rose envisions the life of rules, restrictions on freedom, and inevitable boredom awaiting the young girl. However, Rose realizes she still holds the power to alter her own destiny. Seeking Jack out at the bow of the Titanic, she finds him extending his hand to her. With confidence, she takes his hand and together they ascend to the stern of the ship, where they embrace the last rays of the setting sun. On the evening of April 14th, as the Titanic witnesses its final sunset, Rose leads Jack to her cabin and reveals the heart of the ocean pendant. Lightheartedly, she requests Jack to sketch her like one of those French girls, adorned only with the pendant. With enthusiasm, Jack sketches Rose reclining naked on the couch. Rose then stows away the drawings and the diamond in Cal's safe, accompanied by a sarcastic farewell note. Meanwhile, the captain's assistant notes the unusually calm ocean, which complicates the detection of drifting icebergs due to the absence of characteristic foaming water at their bases. Despite the serene weather, Captain Smith makes a fatal error by choosing not to reduce the liner's speed, relying on his extensive experience. Cal dispatches Lovejoy to locate his missing fiancée, who skipped dinner. Upon hearing Lovejoy's approach, Rose and Jack flee, eventually finding refuge in the ship's boiler room, where they must evade not only Lovejoy but also the irate workers. Their escape leads them to the cargo hold, where they find solace in each other's arms. Cal discovers the sketch of the naked Rose in the safe, along with a note suggesting he can now confine her alongside his other jewels. Rose and Jack, elated, return to the bow deck. The lookouts, momentarily distracted by the R.M.S. couple, suddenly spot an iceberg on the horizon and promptly alert the senior officer. In a frantic attempt to avert disaster, Murdoch orders the wheel to be turned left and the engines to shift into reverse. However, the Titanic's speed proves too great, and despite the crew's swift response, the ship collides with the underwater portion of the iceberg at 11:40 p.m. The icy water swiftly begins to flood the bow compartments of the liner. Only people on the upper decks, including Rose and Jack, witness the collision. Water is also beginning to seep into the cabins on the lower decks, while first-class passengers remain unaware of the catastrophe. With alarm in his voice, Murdoch informs Captain Smith of the iceberg collision. Following the captain's orders, the carpenter inspects the damage and comes to a grim conclusion. The breach cannot be repaired due to extensive flooding. Rose and Jack, accidentally overhearing their conversation, decide to warn Ruth and Cal of the impending danger. In Cal's cabin, security is assembled. They immediately start searching Jack and pull out the heart of the ocean pendant from his coat pocket. Cal accuses his rival of stealing the pendant and orders the officers to arrest him. Jack desperately tries to convince his beloved that he's been framed. Disappointed, the girl watches as he's taken away, deciding that he simply took advantage of her trust. Andrews addresses Captain Smith, Ismay, and the gathered officers with grim news. He reports that 5 compartments of the ship have suffered serious damage and water will inevitably continue to flood the remaining decks.
From this moment, no matter what we do, Titanic will founder.
On board the liner, more than 2,000 people remain, facing less than an hour for rescue. Radioman urgently sends out an SOS signal, informing the captain that the Carpathia is racing towards them at its maximum speed of 17 knots, with an estimated arrival in 5 hours. Responding to the urgency, Captain Smith swiftly orders the commencement of evacuation procedures. First-class passengers are promptly provided with life jackets and directed to the upper deck. In a state of profound shock, Andrews roams the doomed liner's decks, passing by oblivious passengers. Encountering Rose in the first-class salon, he is met with her persistent demands for truth. Trembling, Andrews discloses the sinking reality and urges her to swiftly secure a place on an available lifeboat. Captain Smith prioritizes the boarding of women and children onto the lifeboats. The orchestra begins playing music to help maintain calm amidst the chaos. Meanwhile, third-class passengers are kept below decks to prevent interference with the evacuation of the privileged elite. Observing the unfolding events, Rose discerns the grim reality that only the affluent will have access to survival. Cal's disparaging comment about Jack reveals to Rose that he orchestrated the diamond theft. Despite calls from Ruth and Molly to join them on a lifeboat, Rose chooses to seek out her beloved. Despite Cal's attempts to detain her, she defiantly spits in his face and flees. Rose learns from Andrews the location of the cabin where Jack is detained. She rushes to the flooding lower deck, finding her lover shackled to a pipe. Apologizing, Rose futilely searches for a spare key to the handcuffs. Sensing the dwindling time, she ascends to the upper deck, seeking aid. Encountering a crew member, she pleads for assistance, but he rebuffs her, vanishing down the corridor in a bid to escape the rising waters. With resolve, Rose shatters the glass of a fire cabinet. Retrieving an axe, she plunges into the almost submerged lower deck, determined to reach Jack. Maintaining composure, she wades through the icy water, reaching Jack's side. With a single powerful blow of the axe, she frees him from his restraints. Together, they navigate to the upper decks, where the rescue efforts persist amidst the chaos. Meanwhile, chaos reigns on the upper deck as panic grips the crowd. Desperation drives people to shove and push, scrambling for a coveted spot on the lifeboats. Andrews witnesses the harrowing scene, dismayed as he observes half-empty lifeboats being lowered into the water, each with the capacity to hold up to 65 individuals. Lovejoy informs Cal of a man on the opposite side of the liner who, for a fee, is arranging places in a lifeboat for men, prompting them to consider this option. In their bid to escape from the lower decks, Jack and Rose ally with Fabrizio and Tommy. Together, they forcibly dislodge a bench from the floor, using it as a makeshift battering ram to breach the barriers obstructing their path upward. Upon reaching the upper deck, they are confronted with the sight of nearly all the lifeboats having already been launched into the water. The remaining survivors cluster at the bow of the ship, hopeful for a chance to secure a place on one of the dwindling vessels. Cal prepares to secure his spot in one of the privileged lifeboats reserved for men who have paid for their rescue. However, upon learning from Lovejoy that Rose and Jack have been spotted together, he alters his course, rushing to locate his fiancée. His designated lifeboat descends into the water, with Ismay among its occupants. Rose hesitates to abandon ship without Jack, but Cal unexpectedly intervenes. He drapes his coat over her trembling form, persuading her that a place has been secured for Jack on another lifeboat. Yielding to his assurances, Rose reluctantly boards the lifeboat, while Jack and Cal observe from above. However, she has a change of heart and leaps from the lifeboat back onto the lower deck, where Jack awaits her. Cal witnesses their reunion, his expression betraying a mix of emotions. Attempting to remove his employer from the scene, Lovejoy encounters resistance from Cal. Refusing to concede defeat, Cal seizes a gun from his assistant and sets off in pursuit of the couple. He corners them in the first-class dining room, only to discover that the rising water has already reached waist level. Recognizing the futility of his actions, Cal retreats back to the staircase. Jack and Rose, desperate to find an escape route, encounter barriers blocking their path as the deck rapidly floods. In a moment of urgency, a crew member rushes past them, prompting them to plead for assistance in opening the gates. Amidst the chaos, the crew member fumbles with the keys, ultimately dropping them into the water in a panic. With great difficulty, Jack manages to unlock the gate, enabling their escape. Meanwhile, water inundates the bow of the ship, exacerbating panic among the remaining passengers. A lifeboat is jettisoned from the roof of the superstructure, and in a frenzied state, Murdoch threatens to shoot anyone attempting to board it. Tragically, as one passenger attempts to climb to the lifeboat along the upper deck superstructure, Murdoch fatally shoots him. Then Tommy, whom the crowd accidentally pushes towards the lifeboat. Overwhelmed by the consequences of his actions, the captain's assistant salutes the Titanic before taking his own life. Cal manages to secure a place in a lifeboat pretending to be the father of a lost girl. Meanwhile, Jack and Rose reach the first-class salon, where they encounter Andrew standing solemnly before the clock. Expressing remorse for the failure to construct a dependable ship, Andrews bestows his life jacket upon Rose, steadfastly refusing to save himself. The Titanic swiftly sinks beneath the waves. Overwhelmed by guilt for the ship's demise, Captain Smith seeks solace in the wheelhouse. The orchestra, faithful to their duty until the end, plays its final melody. Most of the remaining passengers on board resign themselves to their inevitable fate, bidding farewell to loved ones, embracing for one last time. Mothers soothe their children with stories, while masterpieces of art and their wealthy owners vanish into the frigid depths. Despite the prevailing class inequality, in the face of death, all passengers find themselves equal. The last two lifeboats are washed overboard by the relentless waves. As the liner tilts forward, the first smokestack collapses, tragically claiming Fabrizio and other passengers in the tumultuous waters. Jack, Rose, and the remaining survivors hasten to the stern's rear end. Clinging desperately to the railings, they watch in horror as the stern ascends higher and higher, witnessing others plummet with screams of terror. Eventually, the powerless liner splits in half, succumbing entirely to the watery abyss. Jack and Rose battle fiercely against the swirling whirlpool, their struggle desperate. Attempting to cling to a piece of door debris, Jack realizes its inability to support both their weights. He selflessly aids Rose onto the door, resigning himself to the frigid waters beside it. Desperate cries for help resonate around them. Molly implores the lookout to maneuver the lifeboat and rescue the survivors, pointing out available space. However, he recoils in fear, citing the risk of capsizing the boat, and steadfastly refuses her plea. Ruth and other lifeboat occupants reject Molly's initiative, compelling her into silence. A chilling silence envelops them. Jack's voice quivers as he encourages Rose, urging her to fight for her life. He implores her to envisage a future, a long life filled with fulfilled dreams, children, and eventually, a peaceful passing in old age. Meeting his gaze, Rose vows not to succumb. Fifth Officer Harold resolves to transfer individuals to a nearby lifeboat and search for survivors. Amidst the eerie quietude, he confronts a harrowing sight. Only frozen, lifeless bodies surround them. Rose, battling against the encroaching numbness of the cold, softly begins to sing Jack's favorite melody when suddenly, Harold's cries rend the air. Tragically, her beloved had succumbed to hypothermia, slipping away before rescue could arrive. Rose, faced with the painful necessity of survival, releases Jack into the depths of the ocean. Exhausted, she swims towards a frozen crew member and, summoning her last reserves of strength, blows his whistle, attracting Harold's attention. At dawn, the rescued are plucked from the icy waters by the Carpathia ship. On board, Cal scours the survivors for Rose, but she veils her face from him. Eventually, he weds and inherits his father's wealth, only to lose it in the stock market crash of 1929. Upon reaching New York, a Carpathia officer queries the girl for her identity, and she introduces herself as Rose Dawson, severing ties definitively with her past life. In the present setting, the team aboard the research ship is moved to tears by the poignant recollections of elderly Rose. Lovett openly acknowledges his past obsession with greed, confessing that he never fully grasped the profound tragedy of the Titanic. When informed that no records of Jack Dawson were ever uncovered, Rose responds with a melancholic smile, revealing that Jack's ticket was purchased under an alias, ensuring it would never be found. She had chosen to safeguard the memory of Jack within her heart, confiding in no one. Under the veil of night, Rose makes her way to the stern of the ship and retrieves the heart of the ocean. Memories flood her mind as she recalls discovering the necklace in a coat pocket during the Carpathia's passage by the Statue of Liberty in New York. With a mischievous smile, Rose gazes at the vast expanse of the ocean before playfully tossing the diamond into its depths. Later, she drifts into a peaceful slumber in her cabin. Adorning the nightstand beside her are photographs from her youth, capturing moments in the places she had once dreamed of exploring with Jack. Rose fulfills her pledge, living a life rich in adventure and experience. As her consciousness descends to the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, the Titanic is restored to its former grandeur. On the staircase of the first-class salon, passengers and crew joyfully welcome her. In the warmth of a cozy bed, as an elderly woman, Rose peacefully passes away, reuniting with Jack once more. The clock, frozen in time, displays 2:20, the hour when the Titanic slipped beneath the waves. We return to the eternal question, was there truly not enough space on that famous door for Jack? Share your theories and speculations in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.